Hello, my name's Julie Lanigan. I'm a paediatric dietitian from the UCL Institute of Child Health. So the difference really is in the protein content and some of the vitamins and minerals. So in cow's milk you have higher protein because it's really designed for a baby cow rather than a baby child. So the fortified milks actually have lower level of protein in, but they also have extra iron and vitamin D, which are some of the nutrients that it's not so easy for young children to find through the diet. Well, protein's a really important nutrient. Children need that for growth and repair, and it also gives them energy to do their day-to-day activities. But we have to get the balance right. If we give them too much protein, then it can actually drive overweight and obesity. So we're concerned about that because this could be fueling overweight and obesity, and this is a big problem. Nowadays, 1 in 3 children will start school already overweight. It's not easy to see, it's not easy for us to recognise. So it's something that we need to be very careful about and make sure there's the right balance of proteins and other macronutrients, so fat, carbohydrate, in the young child's diet. So protein does have different qualities, so that depends on the amino acids, the building blocks that make up the protein. Protein that comes from animals tends to be more complete, so protein from meat or milk is very good quality and readily available in the body. And in other foods, in plant sources, it may not be so well available. So you may need to have slightly more protein from plant sources. So we need to look into different sources of protein for young children and how to include those in their early diet. Yeah, well, it's very important. It means everything. What we eat in our early years is what we're likely to eat as we're older children, when we go through into adult life. So we're really laying down the dietary patterns that we're likely to have through life. And these can protect our health. They can keep us free from deficiencies and also, importantly, free from those excesses or reduce the risk of excesses that will lead to overweight and obesity. Fat is an energy-dense nutrient. It's got twice as many calories as carbohydrates and protein. So again, it can contribute to taking too much energy in and overweight and obesity. But more importantly, we need fat in the diet. Young children need more than adults to get their fat-soluble vitamins and also important essential fatty acids. So we have too much omega-6 fatty acid in our diet today in general, and we're trying to get children to eat more fish and foods that include omega-3s, which are more healthy fats for young children. Yeah, so this is a very exciting topic at the moment. It's a new and emerging area of science. So you probably know that we're all full of bacteria. People say anything to 1.5 as much times our cells are bacteria, or sometimes up to 10 times as many of our cells are bacteria. And we need them to live inside us, so they're concentrated throughout the gut, most in the colon, where they live quite happily with us. So they're known as symbiotic, living happily together with the human body. And they perform important functions, so they can protect immunity, they can provide extra energy in the body, and generally keep the gut healthy and happy, so the child's less likely to have constipation, diarrhea, and tummy troubles. Absolutely, you should be worried because overweight is a big problem around the world, and it's linked to many adult diseases and diseases in childhood as well, short-term problems, sleep apnea, problems with joints, problems with stigma. If a child becomes overweight in childhood, they may be bullied at school, and this can affect how they perform, how well they do at school. And it's very difficult to reverse. Once your child becomes overweight, as we know from adults, it's very hard to actually manage that and get back to a normal weight. Well, as well as making sure your child has a healthy diet, it's also really important to make sure they have the right amount of physical activity. So they need to be running around, skipping, playing, being active for at least up to 3 hours a day is what's recommended now in your child of this age, in preschool children. So that's very important, the other side of the energy balance. Yes, and also the more active your child is, the less likely they are to be sitting in front of a screen. So we all know how often now children are very familiar with iPads, with iPhones. There's lots of nice things on TV for them to watch. So it's also important. And sleep is becoming increasingly recognised as an important area as well. So children who have shorter sleep duration, who don't sleep for 11 hours at night, are more linked, more likely to be overweight later in childhood. How do we get children to sleep more? It's very tricky, but I think it's about having a routine, a regular bedtime, a nice calming routine around bedtime, a bedtime story, and the child just gets used to it, calms down, and should sleep normally and establish a nice pattern that they take forward to later childhood and hopefully into adulthood as well. Yeah, I think it can be helpful for children to have a settle-in snack just before they go to bed. Not too big so that it's having to be digested and keeping them awake, and not immediately before going to bed so that they're likely to wake up during the evening. But certainly it's not good to go to bed hungry, and a light snack and a warm drink is a good idea for young children. So if your child doesn't want to eat, this can be a real concern for parents. It's one of the biggest problems. Parents worry that their children aren't eating enough, that you're not having enough fruits and vegetables, so you're not alone in that. But most children are actually very good at eating to their own appetite and making sure they're taking enough in. And you really don't need to worry. If you see that your child is growing well, has enough energy to run around, do things that other children do, is sleeping well, then you can be very reassured. You do have to have in the back of your mind, is this serious? Is something wrong? And then you go to the GP and get them to check. But in general, these fears, quite natural for parents to have, but really usually nothing to worry about, and children will grow out of these picky, fussy eating habits. Yes, I think parents can be very good role models. So I know we all have busy lifestyles these days with many parents going to work, but it's good to try and eat as a family so that the child sees how mum, dad, elder brothers and sisters are eating. You can bring friends in who eat well to be a role model for your child. It's always good not to try and force, not to use foods as rewards, because this has been seen not to work. So for example, you don't say you can have a chocolate pudding if you eat your broccoli or your vegetables. That really doesn't work. So it's about being calm, being assertive and being authoritative rather than being forceful with children, and just taking it calmly. Well, I think right from the beginning it's really important to get your child involved. So don't be mysterious about vegetables, new vegetables that you're introducing. Show them to your child. Let your child get to know foods, play with them, help prepare when they get to that age when they can actually get involved, and just let them become familiar with foods, and it's a natural part of life. Yeah, I think we have to remember that children have smaller stomachs than adults, so they need to eat more often. They need to have more of a grazing style, little and often diet. So they do need to have their 3 meals, as we do, but a couple of snacks in between is also a good idea with children. And right from the beginning, we can start to make sure that they're healthy. So, for example, we can include vegetables, we can have dips, things like hummus, good high protein or protein-containing foods for children. There is a difference, although it's very hard to distinguish, and sometimes they are lumped together. So they're very subtle differences, really, where a picky child can exclude foods from many groups and only eat certain foods, whereas a fussy child is typically somebody who might eat something one day and then the next day suddenly that's really not something that they like. It's very subjective. What you think is picky and fussy might just be normal behaviour to a child. They have a natural fear of new foods, and this kicks in from about the age of 1. So this is really protecting them from eating anything that's bad for them. So it's nothing really to worry about. They'll naturally want to have sweet foods, and they'll naturally be a little bit worried about anything new. But the trick here is to make sure that you keep offering those new foods. So sometimes it can take many times, maybe 10, 15 times for a new food to be on the plate before a child sees it, becomes familiar, decides it's safe and will happily eat it. So it's really about taking your time and being relaxed. I think the best tips you can give is to really be aware of your child's cues. So a child will indicate to you when they're hungry or when they're not ready to eat. And mums may be very concerned with offering food